yes was because I was just trying to really help it. And I'm like, what's your husband?
And that's just one of the açıdan biraz bekliyoruz. Ben de yarın bir gün yapmayı istiyorum. Haberi göndereyim
I didn't like realize it. We sort of
Sesin kesik kesik geliyor. Benim internetim.
it's kind of funny because how many centuries do you like even some of us bananas
So are you guys gonna stop here?
It's too big for you.
Oh, I was gonna say
It's not the check down from me and my colleague in the office.
Oh, cool.
If he says it.
Well, I almost went to bed.
like now the story
It's just
parts of it you can parts of it like it doesn't happen.
yeah, it's not that. It's just like if the officials come out and they're in the office, they want to we wrote that. I mean, after dinner, we went to the bar and
Where is thing?
married.
I was curious if that water.
That area is nice. I remember being there.
Very downtown.
Yeah, quite touristy. You like living in Prague?
Sir?
You like living in Prague?
Oh, I've lived here all my life. I went to school about 200 meters from here.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Sometimes I take my... I mean, it's nothing. It's the usual for us, but it's 6 o'clock in the morning.
There were so many tourists. Our hotel was packed with tourists.
I normally avoid downtown these days. I had to think about it. Okay. I get lunch there. Okay. garlic. It was fantastic. Very nice.
You get to sit
sauce,
outside?
dumplings, yes. Like yesterday, they also I made it to that
Slona. It's a very Czech place.
yes, I wanted to know because basically I everything.
It's a Czech way too. Yeah.
Yes, and then
Especially
then they cleared away the mess, and then at
they shut it.
9
They say they're not cooking anymore.
she finally came to me and I said, "Can I start with dinner?" And she said, "No, just quantitative."
I'm sorry, I didn't know this.
It's not just quite nice actually, and they were still, bringing out the dinner for the other guests, but she was sort of rude. I went to an Italian
Next door.
No, it was actually backyard. I was just
No, there's
I mean, the food itself wasn't that expensive. It was taking, money for sitting there. Very obvious.
No, there is a few right here. But then his earlier story, it's really weird because it's like his earlier story is entirely about having kids.
So it's basically an equal opportunity.
Yeah,
Like you get to tell them something special, you get to be birthday for a game.
it's like
ale já si jenom ubral, se to přesně to tam nestojíš, okay, radši jděte domů, zabalte se, buďte víceméně ready.
We should do something tomorrow.
Did you put the ale before you mentioned there's like two crafts in Sanger? Sanger was like great, like Sanger calls the under beer and tried to get me to like acknowledge it's probably good, but I was like, I don't know, I was like, that was
I mean, that means it's a tourist trap, because normally they should have. How much was it?
80
For like €3.
The food was nice. It was fresh pasta and wine was.
and like you talk to me and you see and I was like, that's totally so far.
Sanger established this protection racket.
Yeah, and this is Sanger time, and this taco said this is exactly
Remains sitting.
like I could see how the professor in Washington, that's what he said. And then like Sanger's irate, and then like he said he was talking about it. Probably it's like almost certainly yeah. Because it was like
You're like, David, I can't believe you characterized that. Sure, that's
I have an information that the press conference should start in 20 minutes.
We're here. This is the foreign ministry.
yeah, we don't have
This
to
is the president is here. Yeah, here right now. This is my cool.
So you have a view of the
I know where German is.
Yes.
I live like 3 minutes from the German.
So did you cover not at all the 1990s?
Well, in 1989, I was there because as a kid, I would always go and play up in the hill here. So I was there when all these Germans were leaving their trophies behind and
When I came to Europe, I actually looked there to look at it, and on the TV it just looked like a huge boulevard, but then it's basically you're standing in this little forest right behind the embassy.
yeah, this is the embassy.
Yeah.
This is the garden. I have the walking trail. died last year.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
He was very smart, I thought.
Oh, yeah. He spoke, well, he was. He's a special case. He was very wise and always available. He would pretty come and drinks with us. Talk about the owner of the bar was writing some social media for Stoltenberg. He take Condoleezza Rice there when she was in Paris to do the US missile defense thing.
Wasn't that his fault? I think it's getting easier on a Friday evening to get a place outside.
Schwarzenberg to get into cafe for drinks. Great.
That's terrific. Thank you very much for doing that. It's 7:30 under John Hudson.
Schwarzenberg would always be supported lots of like
I think I see it on Google laughing next to it.
activists and they gave an apartment. He was friends with the dissidents from Afghanistan.
Okay. Thank you very much for your help.
Ambitious intellectual, similar intellectuals, but a bit on the edge of the Israeli system. And there was this poet who was locked up for 9 years by commies. His name was a heavy had a drink and he died. But he gave this poet.
Oh,
Schwarzenberg drank quite a bit too.
I would assume that you know that he came over and
This poet was this very important figure in the underground. Schwarzenberg gave him an apartment. And he owns and paid everything for the rest of his life.
Yeah, that's great. I'm John Hudson, reporter with Washington.
He's always doing it.
Yeah, I'm about to send you WhatsApp.
He was very fond of women too. He was It was fun. It was fun. You several times told me to come visit his castle in Austria.
really?
I said, you know, I said, I shouldn't do that
Yeah.
because you're a politician.
That's right. It's still it's nice to extend social invitation.
I think sitting about it.
It's a pity he didn't become president. It was
I
cool.
met him very briefly at Informal.
Zeman won instead, so we
Germany. So, like, I was always clumsy with my fingers. I'm sure keypad was better. But I noticed it was the same for you yesterday.
No, I always can't. Always a decision. Yeah, sometimes I go to the
And that comes together with that.
Basically, I had a whining instead of winning. It's not.
No, just tossing it. You know, a client who told me that he was crazy and dragged me down to bed. So I thanked him, and now this is coming up. It's so when you're in the office. I mean, I use this as a middle one. I have two big screens. I think the day he was sentence locked out, I called a taxi and went back to my key. Never bought it.
się zgadzają. Tam można pisać, że Polska
Alright, so the Secretary General is on his way here.
a my tu mamy pół godziny później na razie. To oświadczyli ministra spraw zagranicznych. Ja na razie siedzę na
I'm just saying that I'm just looking at this check.
Jestem mówiony
For the storm shadows and long range, like how do you
Liquidator size is the same.
long range cruise missiles, right?
Ukraine can use German weapons. I mean, it's the
That's a story that
So it's
Berlin
not just cruise missiles, it's not
haben in Buch.
it's a cruise missile.
Tak, dziękuję.
in the end, well, the great thing is the click on the spot, because the trend
You
doesn't.
can basically
There
skim
were a
through it
lot of,
and then
I
just
mean, the
jump in.
translation wasn't great. I mean, not the transcription.
Mm.
It was because of the audio.
Yeah. I was still pretty far away. And
why don't we do
calculations
it that way?
together. So,
Why don't we do it that way? I can feed you
Mm-hmm.
that, whatever.
yeah, and just give me an indication
I can even put
which
like,
direction
yeah,
that
I
it
can,
goes. It was really helpful. I don't know
Yeah.
whether you saw it. I didn't do an overnighter in the end, but
Yeah.
basically very exhausted
I can write the first.
yesterday, and I basically used all your open stuff.
Okay. I can write the top, but just like what we need. And then if you tell me the Wi-Fi, I can take it back to the I'm
Just
sure.
edit.
Yeah. Because if I write like separately, it's like,
Mm.
so
Yeah, why do we have to?
why do we have to do that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We just start from mechanism.
detail, like
same
how
situation with John.
Yeah. Then you can ask that I think was Miller
Again,
or someone. Yeah, on Monday they asked me that. He was like, well, it comes from, I don't know.
and we also know it's the same thing as I think.
Have you been told to know by people, hey, you should be learners, and when you're doing something on our page, you should,
Yes.
at least as a courtesy, call the chief or whoever and say, hey,
Yes.
do you guys mind if for my reporting on this? Yeah. Will you report directly to Rachel?
There's somebody else. I don't know.
Trying to get just to get a bar.
No, we can, yes, I think.
That was the reason.
Do you remember Charlotte Hart?
I do.
There was some funny story about him. He was original. He was in London, they were doing a G7 summit in Scotland or something like that, and they had to talk about like where they're staying. And he said, well, I'm staying with a source. And somebody later, I think I used to, hey Sean, come on, we know we're staying with you. He was some
I mean, we did because Ukraine published more or less. We've been walking for 40 billion years. I don't really see any need to get into this trade. I don't think.
Is there any feedback on that? Is anybody saying, like the ministers on that specific
They
number?
didn't go into the number.
But the
Then again,
Estonia
I
and
think,
the Finnish were talking about the GDP percentage.
yes.
It checks out engaging.
Operations today, and the way
You don't want to commit to money.
additionally, IDF troops
But then again,
essentially
it wasn't the major.
are
It
located from us
was the major
level of
how much
And then
I think it's rather the restrictions and nobody really asked about during those things.
But it doesn't say like
Or what? Or the level.
Neither about money nor about trade.
I mean, I'll throw that in. I'm just not
Or
prepared.
the Belgian.
Sure, I think we'll touch on it again if it's about
In reference. Do you know the process, like, when looking at IDF things?
No, I'm kindly agreed to update these results. As you all know.
Andrew's alright, is he?
Totally. Both of them, Andrew and John Irish. It's just fantastic. They were also now we're not.
My good impression.
And my dad also said basically they took
Taking Stoltenberg a long time to walk over us.
Yeah, just feeling slightly guilty.
All right, so the Secretary General is already in the building. He will be coming shortly.
He is late and Lincoln's usually
When you may start. Start.
I think he's gunning. My theory is that he's gunning vice president.
Do you take directly into it?
Yes.
Excellent.
And, you know, Harry Potter.
And then I asked her for you.
What's the report of, you know, this like weighted feather? Does all the work by itself.
Cotton and Vans.
So now I've signed up even for the free version. I should be able to do a
Yes.
group with some people to share.
Honestly, since I didn't on it, I mean, you were the first I shared for half a year now, and it changed.
That's fine.
Just try to figure it out. My feeling is it used to be universal. But I think that you
Oh, Rubio.
some amount of data.
That's what it's using.
Yeah.
A couple
And
few
like,
hundred.
yeah, and I'm like 80 euros per year, which doesn't give me everything, but
So why does it just prevent us from using it?
I think it's not something.
It wouldn't create that same dynamic.
I think they say
It's good you don't work in anything sensitive.
Yeah, like a Republic, like a Red House. Yeah, we have like two. Just, yeah, really. But then I think that could begin to come under a lot of pressure from the staff.
as long as nobody stops me from using it.
We do such a, I mean, there's this trend, transcription software as well, where you load up it, and we, like, can I have, it's like, no, somebody has a password in London. So I was told by our team, which uses it. So we now have like 30 people in this team using one loaded password. But we must be by, like, this is illegal user software. But it's I'm sure this is what it's so we're doing.
Like they thought he was going to get attacked. Yeah, I thought he would get attacked. Like public use, like Trump was when Trump was in power. Yeah. Basically, I think as long as you don't attack city members, which is pretty much fine.
This time.
Yeah, never.
But they don't know what language.
Right, but then Vance does stuff like
Because we have mostly, this trend just check language, does it mention
he
it?
likes to play. Yeah.
I mean, there's a translator and transcription.
Good afternoon. We'll hear from the Secretary General and then take some questions.
Good afternoon. We have just concluded a productive meeting of NATO foreign ministers. Our discussions focused on our support for Ukraine. We all want to stop this war, but the paradox is that the better we prepare for the long haul, the sooner the war can end. Russia must understand that it cannot wait us out. No final decisions were made today, but we made significant progress on 3 issues. First, NATO's plans to play a greater coordinating role in the provision of equipment and training. Practically all military aid to Ukraine, 99%, comes from NATO allies. So it makes sense that NATO should play a greater role in these efforts. This will enable us to use the NATO structures to put our support on a firmer footing, provide more predictability to Kiev, and address both immediate and longer-term needs. Secondly, I have proposed that allies commit to a multi-year financial pledge for Ukraine. Since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, allies have provided approximately 40 billion euros worth of military support to Ukraine each year. We must maintain at least this level of support each year for as long as necessary. I have also proposed that allies should share this burden equitably. This will improve accountability and give Ukraine the predictability they need to plan for the long term. Finally, we discussed Ukraine's path to NATO membership. Allies agree that Ukraine's future is in NATO, and we are determined to make progress in charting this path. Membership will be Ukraine's ultimate security guarantee. It will ensure a lasting peace and provide the stability needed for reconstruction. Let me add this on Allied support and the question of escalation. Russia started this war. They annexed Crimea in 2022. And in 2020, they annexed Crimea in 2014. And in 2022, Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine began the bloodiest conflict in Europe since World War II. Russia is striking hospitals, schools, and shopping malls. Russia is bombing power and water infrastructure. Russia is killing Ukrainian civilians. Ukraine is defending itself from appalling Russian brutality. So let me be clear. Self-defense is not escalation. Self-defense is a fundamental right. It is enshrined in the UN Charter. Ukraine has the right and the responsibility to protect its people. And we have the right to help Ukraine uphold its right of self-defense. Of course, Russia doesn't like this. At every stage of this war, Russia has complained, threatened, and saber-rattled. Putin wanted to deter NATO allies from supporting Ukraine. But we are not, and we will not be deterred. Russia is the one attacking. Russia is the one escalating, most recently by opening a new front in the Kharkiv region, and with waves of new strikes on Ukrainian citizens. As the war has evolved, our support has evolved, and it will continue to evolve. I welcome that allies are providing many different types of assistance, and at the NATO summit, will put NATO's support on a firmer footing for the long haul.
Thank you, Secretary General. I'll start with Bloomberg. Andrea.
Well, we are speaking about money for the future, and that's per definition fresh. We have already spent roughly 40 billion per year so far. What I'm asking allies to do is to commit that for the following years. And that's new money, because that's money which is not there now. And the important thing is that we need predictability. We need a firm commitment for the long haul to ensure that Ukraine is able to plan, to ensure that Ukraine has the predictability they need to conduct this war, self-defense, but also to send a message to Moscow that Moscow cannot wait us out. So the more clear it is that we are prepared for long haul, the sooner this war can end. Because the sooner President Putin realizes that he cannot win this war, we will be there for as long as necessary. Let me just add, before we continue, that I would also like to thank the Czech authorities, the Czech government, and the foreign minister for hosting this event. The foreign ministerial has been excellent, and the surroundings, the city of Prague, the castle, has been an excellent venue for a very important foreign ministerial meeting in NATO.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Czech TV.
Secretary General, could you provide us a bit more details about the future of Ukraine in NATO? Do you have some timing in your mind? Is it years or a long future?
NATO allies agree that Ukraine will become a member of the alliance. We are working on how to move Ukraine closer to membership. At the Vilnius summit, we agreed on important steps. We removed the requirement for something called membership action plan, meaning that we turned the membership process for Ukraine from a two-step process to a one-step process. And we also agreed a comprehensive package for interoperability to ensure that Ukraine comes closer to NATO standards, doctrines, and full interoperability with NATO. Then I hope that at the summit in Washington we can take further steps. And I also believe strongly that the fact that we will most likely establish a mission providing or a stronger structure for providing support to Ukraine, that will also help to move Ukraine closer to membership. And of course, anything we do together with Ukraine will help them to come closer to membership. So allies agree that Ukraine should be a member, but the timing of the invitation depends on when there will be consensus and when the conditions are met.
Thank you. Dan.
Thank you. The announcement yesterday decision yesterday by the U.S., Germany, and maybe some other allies about possibly striking into Russia, retaliatory strikes into Russia, seems to be the latest example of NATO members coming around to a position that Ukraine and some allies have been begging for a long time, often less than what Ukraine wants, but actually relenting. Over the past day, has there been any discussion, or is there any ongoing discussion about trying to get more ahead on some of these tactics and enabling Ukraine to do more to actually pursue the strategy that you've outlined? Thank you.
As this war has evolved, NATO's support has evolved, and I welcome that allies are easing restrictions on the use of weapons. We need to remember what this is. This is a war of aggression. Russia has attacked Ukraine, and Ukraine has the right of self-defense, and the right of self-defense includes also striking legitimate military targets in Russia. And the fact that Russia has launched a new offensive, that they have escalated the war by opening a new front in the north, trying to move towards Kharkiv or into the Kharkiv region, demonstrates that when they now are attacking Ukraine from inside Russia, on the other side of the border, when the borderline and the front line is more or less the same, then of course the only way to attack behind enemy lines is also then to attack into Russian or to strike into Russian territory. Allies are providing support in different ways. Some allies have never imposed any restrictions. Other allies have eased their restrictions. We just need to be vigilant. We need to adapt and evolve our support as the war evolves. And of course, we address these issues in the meeting today, and will continue to coordinate very closely. That's also one of the reasons why I believe it will be helpful to have a stronger NATO coordination and a long-term financial pledge in line with what I have proposed.
Okay, Fats, Thomas, over there. Over there. Yep, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thomas Kuschka, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Secretary General, again, 2 questions on the multi-year pledge. So do I understand you correctly that you no longer call for allies to make commitments for the time after the war? Because, of course, the 40 billion refers to wartime contributions. And secondly, when you say that the burden should be spread equitably among allies, are you referring to the NATO spending key, so contributions to common costs at NATO? Thank you.
So we will now start the work on the details of such a financial pledge, and there's no way I can go into all the details before I have presented them to all the allies and before we have worked through those details. But I strongly believe that we need a financial pledge, both to address immediate needs, but also to address the need to build the future force. So this is about making the Ukrainians able to defend themselves today and to deter future attacks in the future. So it's a combination of short-term and long-term. And of course, many of the things we do now as immediate responses to the immediate needs, for instance, providing F-16s, is part of the immediate response, the immediate needs for Ukraine to defend themselves today. But of course, many of those capabilities will also be part of the future force to deter any attack in the future. So I think this distinction between the future force and the needs today is a bit artificial. These things are linked, and therefore I think also it makes sense that NATO plays a role both in building the future force and in coordinating the support for helping the Ukrainians to deter aggression or to defend aggression today. Then again, details on burden sharing. We have to come back to that. But of course, GDP has been used before. GDP is a way that reflects in a way the economic strength, the income of each and every country. So when we discuss burden sharing in NATO, that's at least one option we can look into. And again, I can be more precise later on in this process. And at the summit, I expect to be able to tell you all the details.
Okay, thank you. Over to New York Times.
Hi, Secretary General. Edward Wong from the New York Times. Earlier in the war, one of the main reasons why restrictions were placed in the US on the use of weapons by various allied countries was because of the fear that President Putin would order the use of a tactical nuclear weapon in the battlefield in Ukraine. I'm wondering what has changed in that assessment. Do you have new intelligence that shows that the threshold is higher than you have previously believed? Do you think that the allied countries made a mistake earlier in being too fearful of this? And have China and India exercised influence with Putin since then?
I think we need to understand that these are national decisions, and different allies have provided different types of support, and many allies have not imposed any restrictions. So that's nothing new, that NATO allies don't have restrictions. They give the weapons to Ukraine, and of course they all assume that they will be used also in line with international law, but international law also opens up for the use against military targets in Russia, because that's part of self-defense. Then other allies have had more restrictions, but some of these restrictions are now eased or reduced, reflecting that the war has changed. Because now the front line is not inside Ukraine. Most of the fighting so far happened deep inside Ukraine. but now the fighting is in the Kharkiv region on the border between Russia and Ukraine, and then it makes sense also then to adapt any restrictions that would make it impossible for the Ukrainians to hit back against artillery positions, missile positions in Russia, directly attacking Ukrainian forces or Ukrainian cities. President Putin has threatened NATO allies since the beginning of the war. He has been out there again and again. Actually, the day before the invasion, he gave a speech where he threatened any ally that provided support to Ukraine. But we are not being deterred, because if we had been deterred by that message, then we couldn't have given any support. He tried to prevent us from giving any military support. They tried to prevent us from providing armor, advanced missile systems, fighter jets, and we have evolved and stepped up our support because we strongly believe that Ukraine has the right for self-defense, and we have the right to help Ukraine upholding the right of self-defense.
Okay, thank you. European Pravda.
Thank you. European Pravda Ukraine. I have a question about this long-term support. We know that some allies are not willing to provide Ukraine with military assistance. How do you see, could this decision be adopted in a way that it would not be able to veto it if one country decides not to grant military assistance to Ukraine? Thank you.
I'm confident that we will reach good conclusions that will ensure that NATO allies, of course, will continue to provide support to Ukraine, and that we'll have a stronger NATO framework around that support to ensure coordination and predictability and accountability. Because we need to ensure that when support is announced, pledged, that actually that turns into real deliveries to Ukraine. And we have seen some discrepancies between what has been promised and what has been delivered. So for better coordination, for better compliance, for ensuring predictability, I strongly believe that NATO should play a bigger role in coordinating this support. And we will find ways to ensure that that this is decisions that will work and will not be blocked. So I will not make my job easier if I share with you all the details of how we are discussing these issues. So at the end of the day, I will present you with a beautiful conclusion, and then I can tell all the details.
Okay, the lady in the fourth row.
Thank you, sir. Chinese defense minister today denied again that China is providing any assistance to Russia's war effort, saying it was impartial in the matter and that it strictly controls its military exports. Meanwhile, of course, the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State has said this week that it's a sustained effort backed by PRC leadership and designed to give Russia every support. A UK official recently suggested that lethal aid is on its way to Beijing. So after these months of sustained diplomatic pressure, what is NATO observing in the trends in China? Is its increase for Russia, is its support for Russia increasing, and is lethal aid a possibility? Thank you.
China is propping up Russia's war economy. Russia would not have been able to conduct the war of aggression against Ukraine without the support from China. China is delivering big amounts of dual-use equipment, advanced electronic equipment, including high-end technology and semiconductors, and 90% of the microelectronics that Russia imported last year came from China. And without these advanced high-end products, Russia would not have been able to produce the missiles, the bombs, the planes they are producing to attack Ukraine. So there is no doubt that China is playing a key role in enabling the Russians to produce the weapons they use to attack Ukraine. And in return, Moscow is mortgaging its future to Beijing. And then on top of that, you have North Korea providing big amounts of ammunition, and Iran providing drones and other types of weapons to Russia.
Okay, one last question for Asahi Shimbun, please. Go ahead.
What will be discussed in the July summit with Indo-Pacific partners, and is there any progress since last year?
Yes, and I think the war in Ukraine and the issue just addressed about how China is playing an important role to enable Russia to attack Ukraine demonstrate that security is not regional anymore. Security is global. The war in Ukraine is something that can take place because North Korea, Iran, and China are providing support to Russia. So it demonstrates the link between Europe and Asia-Pacific, and what happens in this Asia-Pacific matters for Europe and vice versa. So I look forward to welcoming the heads of state and government from Japan, South Korea, New Zealand and Australia. We strongly believe that we should strengthen our partnership with these countries, not least to address the challenges that China poses to our security. And of course, this matters for these partners, it matters for us, and therefore we need to strengthen our cooperation as we will do at the summit in Washington.
Thank you, Secretary General, and thank you all.
Thank you so much.
I'm wondering whether I don't know if that is also, but I mean,
Channel 1. 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 Channel 1.